I would skip lunch and train myself on TIG. Obviously, I had help. You know, there was guys that were like, yeah, sure, we'll show you this. We don't know why you're not eating, but okay. You really like welding that much.
Don't miss your chance to see the latest in metal fabrication solutions at the Fabricators Technology Summit, August 20th and 21st in the Chicagoland area. This exclusive event, hosted by FMA, offers opportunities to visit local shops, see the latest equipment in action, and network with others in the industry. Visit fmamfg.org for more information. And now, back to the episode.
Hello, I'm Dan Davis with the Fabricator Magazine, and welcome to today's episode of the Fabricator Podcast. My co-host today is
Rafael Guerrero, editor of The Welder.
Good job, Rafael. It's only our fourth take. It's not true. It was only second take. Anyway, today's guest is Desirée Guzmán of Chicago Women in Trades. She is a cover story subject of a feature that appeared in the
March-April
edition of The Welder. I needed 4 takes to get that one right earlier. And she's really interesting, brings a lot of energy. She talks about her time as a jewelry maker, which got her on the path to working with her hands, and then going through the Chicago Women in Trades program herself to become a welder, work out in commercial industry, and then kind of going back to where she started her welding career.
Come full circle, yeah. Now she's instructing.
Yeah, she's really a joy to talk to, and I think you'll enjoy it. But today we want to begin this program with a reference to the Spin Welder toy from Mattel in 1974. We had a guest, Michael Bennett of Michael Bennett Designs on the Fabricator Podcast. When did that first drop?
It was episode 47 back in like February.
So he made a reference to the Spin Welder toy as he was talking about kind of what got him on the path to working with his hands and into welding. And I don't think anyone in the room had some sort of reference to it because, I don't know, I'd never heard about it.
Well, he was trying to describe it, and we didn't know, and Google searches didn't really help us. And then when we posted the episode on YouTube, several weeks later, somebody commented, he's talking about Mattel's Spin Welder.
Yes.
So we have since found an old commercial for it, and
we have new perspective. Okay. Rafael, do you recall doing anything like this when you were a kid?
This is before my time, 1974.
Oh, geez, dude, that just kills me. You can't say that.
Well, so there's YouTube is an old commercial from 1974 that essentially it looks like a hot glue gun, right? Mm-hmm. And you're just melting plastic into plastic. And I guess that could be kind of dangerous for children.
Yeah, maybe.
A little burnt skin never hurt anybody.
Right, it teaches you how to be safe.
So, like most good advertising, it showed the kids the little commercial we were watching building a drag racer.
Yeah,
which looks really cool. But you know damn well if I worked on that thing at age 10, I would have broken all the parts.
Yeah,
if I had gotten it together with Scotch tape. Well, I guess you have glue, so you can use the glue.
Scotch.
There's no way I could have put that thing together.
Dan is welding with Scotch tape.
You weld the axle and it can't roll.
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
Well, that's Griffin's also new perspective. Griffin, are you familiar with anything like this?
No.
Yeah. Did you have anything as a toy like this, Rafael and Griffin?
No, I did not.
Well, the idea is that it seems dangerous, but Mattel still promotes it on their brand portfolio.
Really?
Oh, so they're still promoting
They
it.
probably still have the brand then.
Yeah, right. And you can buy them on eBay there's one for $43.
So so we're discussing earlier whether we wanted to purchase one of these things, but I think we should leave it in the hands of the professionals. So if you're actually listening or watching this, we encourage you to buy one of these sets and work with it and report back to us.
Right. Buy the one off eBay. Well, there's a woman on YouTube named Fran Blanche that did a kind of review of it. And she said she had to buy multiple sets because many of them that she bought were missing significant pieces.
Well, that sounds like an issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you can actually, there's a spin-off, something called the Spin-Gineer.
Whoa.
Near.
That does the same thing.
Really?
Yeah. So I guess.
And for
So
33
the kid in
bucks
this
by the
picture
looks
we're
of it.
looking at is building a suspension bridge,
Yeah.
which may or may not support the weight of a cat. I'm not sure.
Right. So it goes from, you know, car fabrication to like structural fabrication to the modern day toy.
So let's just say there's no reason a child shouldn't be inspired by today's toy offerings. And if that doesn't work out, we can always go in the past and get the toys that inspired a generation who's way older than Raphael.
I think we should buy one of these and test it out on a future episode.
I love the classic
should.
We. I am not sitting around playing
Just
with
do a whole unboxing episode.
Yeah.
I'll let you two dudes do that. And y'all can call me in when y'all done.
I say we buy one of each and then compare and
Yeah,
contrast.
there you go. Two-parter.
Right.
I don't know if we have the budget for that.
Each one of these are like 40 bucks.
As I mysteriously,
Well, I believe that one's
as I
33
conveniently
bucks.
think about our budget.
Yeah, right.
I think
Maybe we should go with this one. This is 33 versus the other one's 43. So
Yeah, the new one is,
we want to
yeah.
be
The new
Cost
Spin-Gineer is
There you
43 or 33 bucks. But
well, we look forward to this report from our Spin-Gineers, Gareth and Raphael.
yeah.
In the meantime, I think you'll enjoy this episode with Desirée Guzmán, who doesn't use glue as part of her training
Right.
for America's workforce.
Yeah.
Yeah, stick around and enjoy.
Thank you, Daddy Disconnect.
That's a hint of something to come.
It's almost time to celebrate manufacturing's finest contributors at the annual Nuts, Bolts, and Thingamajigs Awards Gala. This fun and exciting evening supports the next generation of manufacturers by raising funds for scholarships and educational programs. Help build tomorrow's skilled workforce by attending or participating in the online silent auction. Bid on artwork and other unique items throughout the evening from anywhere. Get all the details at fmamfg.org. And now, back to the episode.
Welcome back to the Fabricator Podcast. Today's guest, Desirée Guzmán. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Desiree's with the Chicago Women in Trades, and she's going to tell us a little bit about herself and her connection with that. My co-host, Rafael Guerrero, wrote a story on her for our
early 2024 issue of the
March,
Welder one.
April. I was trying to get the months in order.
Yeah, we can, you know, it's right on the table. We can just look at the cover.
But I can't move because this giant
Oh, yeah.
microphone.
Yeah, she's
Desiree's
got
going to
it.
move.
See?
There you go. She's recognizing herself.
Yeah.
She wants to make sure that's her.
Yeah.
So, Desiree, tell us about yourself. How'd you get involved with welding?
Yeah, all right. The way I got involved was I went to a trip to Puerto Rico, and I was in Old San Juan, and I saw a woman with a tent, and she had a steel block on her knee, and she had some wire, and she was hammering with a small hammer, just designs. And I saw her tent, and it was a 10 by 10 covered from floor to table of jewelry and art. And I was like, wow, she does that all on her knee? Like, first of all, that must be really bad. But two, how long have you been doing this? So I was just, I think it was a 7-day trip, and I probably visited her probably like 4 times. And I just would have extensive conversations with her. Like, I would buy things off her, right? But then be like, there was this pair here yesterday that looked like this. She's like, I'll get it for you. And then we just would talk. And she said she sustained herself for like 13 years as an artist, a metal artist, and what she did. And I was completely intrigued because I didn't think you can support yourself as, you know, an artist, much less a woman doing metal work, right? And so I came back to Chicago, and I was like working at a cubicle, and I was like, I'm going to go buy some wire. I'm going to go buy some, you know, hammers. Let's just go check this out. And I did have one friend who was a metal worker, and she was in ornamental iron. She was making like railings and staircases. And so she's like, oh, you're into this? I'll give you some steel blocks, and I'll start you up with some file, you know, just introductory level metalworking tools. And so she was all for it. Gave me steel, gave me, you know, introductory level stuff. And every day after work, after coming home on the train, I'd just sit on my porch and kind of fiddle with wire, fiddle with metal. And at that point, I was like, how do you put words on metal? How do you put color on metal? And so I taught myself, I got a kiln, you know, the slow investment of tools that accumulates, right? And I got a kiln, and I learned how to enamel metal, like where you melt you fuse the glass, powdered glass onto copper and brass. And then I was like, how do you etch, you know, how do you put images on metal? So then acid etching. And then it just kind of snowballed to the point where I was like, welding, you know?
Yeah.
How do you weld? You know, I've kind of like topped all these things that I can teach myself, right? But how do you weld? Can women even weld? Like, where is the opportunities, or where is a space that I can go to? And so I grew up in Little Village, and there's a Washburn Trade School, right? That was this big, magnificent building. And I only saw men coming in and out of it, right? And then at some point it was vacated, and then it's been, you know, demolished. And so it was just kind of this idea of where would I go? And I think I Google searched, and Chicago Women in Trades came out, and I was like, whoa, it's like down the street.
Right.
And so there was no excuse, right? Other than my own apprehension of like, can I do that? Am I good enough? What do I know about welding?
Right.
And I applied, you take an aptitude test, and then you get an interview, and went through all the steps, and they're like, yeah, you're in. I'm like, what? So it's back then it was a 3-month program. And I went through, and 2 weeks later I had a job in manufacturing.
Wow.
And I was like welding, and I learned stainless steel, you know, how to weld on stainless steel, how to weld on carbon. I would skip lunch and train myself on TIG. You know, I'd eat my lunch on the first break.
Yeah.
And then I was like, do you mind if I just, you know, fiddle around for the 30 minutes? And they're like, okay. And taught myself TIG, stainless, carbon, and aluminum. Obviously, I had help. You know, there was guys that were like, yeah, sure, we'll show you this. We don't know why you're not eating, but okay. You really like welding that much. And it just kind of snowballed from there, like the interest, the different companies I worked at. And now I circled back. They had an opening, and they're like, hey, we need an assistant instructor. Do you want to come back? And I was like, what? Of course. Like a circle back to where I started. And so that happened, and then recently I got promoted to lead instructor, so and welding program coordinator. So it's really great, full circle, because when the women enter our program and they're scared, they're nervous, they have this inner voice, right? That's like feeding from all types of avenues. It could be, you know, upbringing, society, whatever that voice tells them they can't do it. I understand. I'm like, I know where you're at. Trust me, in this very short amount of time, you can transform and like pivot your career, and it's gonna be great. So like, I just asked like that commitment to themselves through those like moments where you hate welding, right?
Right.
Those days where you're like, wow, why am I doing this? You need to come back the next stage and show up. You keep showing up for yourself. So it's been awesome to come back and kind of bring my experiences. Not only that, but when you get on the job and you're like, why didn't I know this? Like, why am I learning this right now? They should have taught me this in school. So now trying to teach that, right? Like, be comfortable with the disc cutter. Be comfortable with tools outside of welding. I don't want them just to run a bead. I want them to be able to fabricate, jig, square up, you know, whack a hammer, you know, grab a hammer and whack some metal if they need to, and just kind of do more than just weld, right? And be able to think on their feet. And also I have them troubleshoot their machine a lot, because that was one thing when I got on the job, you know. I remember I was at an interview, and the man's like, oh, so you have some experience, all right. And then he just spun the dials. He was like, go ahead and set it. And I was like, what gauge are we at? He's like, well, don't you have a gauge reader? I'm like, awesome. You know, like, this is going to be a great interview. I love it. And so kind of removing that fear aspect, right, that I felt at so many points on my journey, and being like, guess what? Every morning I'm going to spin the dials, and you're going to figure this out and read the chart and just learn what gas, you know, look at the gas tank. What mix do we have? Ask for the diameter, what questions to ask, right? Like, what wire are you running? What gauge? And I'll figure it out. So, like, making sure they're good. Yeah. In that kind of way. Yeah. That was a long-winded answer.
No, you've given us a nice summary, and now we're going to the Wayback Machine. We're going to walk through this. You're good,
all right, thanks for joining us.
All right. Thank you. I'll take my cookie now. All right.
Oh, it should be pointed out that guests of the Fabricator podcast get cookies. So the welding journey began roughly around when? It's kind of recent, right?
2010.
Oh, okay.
No, I've been a metalworker. I did that because Rafael knows this because we had like this interview, but I did end up launching a company.
Okay. So
I was like, I started off Etsy. I was like, oh, this is just a hobby. Yeah. But realistically, I don't have the attention span for just a hobby. I either commit to it or I don't, you know. So I was like, well, now I'm here in it to win it with the metal. Right. And that's where I kind of kept pushing myself with like learning different processes of metalwork. And then I launched this company called Mano y Metal. and I've shipped to like Japan, New Zealand, Germany, LA was my big one, and New York as well, Hawaii. So different parts of the world that I've never even been to, right? Like, but part of me went through the work, right?
Wow, okay.
And then I would do festivals of like thousands of people. So like the pressure of a 3-day festival, and I'm a one-woman show. Yeah. Don't mind me hammering until 4 a.m., you know, like learning to soundproof my apartment, because that's, you know, I was sharing space. So like soundproofing rooms, getting titanium hammer because it's the lightest weight, right? So I wouldn't blow out my elbow, just things like that, learning to cut metal. So like being my own little kind of manufacturing plant, like systematically, while this is etching, I'm going to cut this, and while that's patinaing, I'm going to cut the, you know, and just kind of creating the system. So when I got into manufacturing, I'm like, okay, I could do this. And then when I further like got into furniture making, I already had systems in place of what I had done on a small scale.
Right.
So I did that for like 9 years, and then I did welding.
Wow. So you're doing furniture making as part of your business?
No. Oh,
later.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
as a welder.
Yeah.
As a welder.
When did you get into arc welding?
I probably 2018, 2019.
Okay.
So fairly recent for sure. But not recent to like a hammer with metal and like being tough with it and learning, being open.
Right.
Welding is so humbling. Like you think you think you know something, and it's like, oh, good luck. Here's this new process. Here's this new position. That's something what I want to reiterate to the students is, this is a beautiful, humbling process, right? Like, don't ever think you're the best at anything, because there's always something more to learn. There's always another process to master,
right?
And how to become more efficient. And
Which you mentioned some festivals that you were working at when you were, you know, doing. You still had that jewelry business.
Yeah, like Pitchfork Music Fest,
no kidding.
like big music fest. A lot of local ones like Fiesta del Sol, and then we got Mole de Mayo in Pilsen. So local meaning, you know, just a couple thousand people, 3-day weekend. Yeah. You're working, I don't know, 15 hours, and you have to have enough inventory. So I would prepare months in advance, in addition to shipping out daily orders, right? And so it's a lot of coordination to do. So it was really nice to switch to welding, because you clock in and you clock out, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, haha, no emails.
Right.
I'm not doing that part. Yeah. And then just kind of labor in a way that wasn't new to me.
Yeah. So did you grow up in a family where there were creatives or people who worked with their hands?
No. I mean, my mom would throw together a mural on our wall if she wanted to, that kind of thing.
Right,
it was more like painting. Definitely not hands-on. Single-parent household, just me and my mom. I was the oldest of 3 kids.
Did you consider yourself creative?
Definitely creative as far as like writing or dancing or drawing. You know, that never metalwork.
So you kind
would
of
have told
discovered
me
it,
at
right?
like 18, like, hey, you're gonna be a metalwork. No way. I'd be like, who's gonna be a metalwork? What are you talking about? So I'm kind of upset that I didn't have access to it at a younger age, like in high school. I am like, where was this? Why didn't I know about this option? Because I think,
was it even an option in the school you were in?
No, I was in a charter high school. Absolutely not.
Okay. Yeah.
They like popped up like, you know, my mom didn't want me going to a certain school, so she's like, there's this charter high school. Yeah. And I went there, and I think it had like 5 years, and then it closed down. So it was that kind of situation where it was very modest, definitely no access to welding or metalwork. And so when I found it, it was amazing how I just magnetized. It was just a magnetic pull where I've been committed to it all this time. Right.
Before you went to Chicago Women in Trades, was there a little bit of apprehension in terms of what you were getting into? What did you think? What did you think of the term manufacturing? What did you think about that whole environment?
Well, I didn't even know about the different pathways that you can take in metalwork. So I didn't know that there was manufacturing, union, or creative fabrication. You know, like I didn't know all the branches of metalwork that were available, but I did know that I wanted to learn welding, and I wasn't clear about what direction, but I was fueled by being open to whatever directions I would be led into through it, right? And I don't think unions were really pushed on us at that point. So then my urgency to get a job upon graduation was what led me to manufacturing. I was like, let me do that. But I've interviewed, I interviewed for fab shops in between, things like that. And then, COVID hit, right? And so at that point I had an option. I remember between going to a small fabrication shop or going to manufacturing, and I went there because I was an essential worker and was able to work throughout the whole pandemic, which shut down, while that shop had to close down for several months. And I just could not have a job.
Right.
I'm a single mom myself, so then I need to be the one to bring in the money. So there's no
Right.
way I can just be at home.
Yeah.
Like, so I was an essential worker throughout the entire pandemic as a welder.
Okay. And how was that experience, your early days in manufacturing?
Oh, wow. Intense. I mean, I worked 6-hour days, 10 hours, 6 days a week. I was the first one to volunteer for overtime. I was like, okay, let's do it. I love challenges, right? And I was like, okay, I'm brand new, and everyone knows that here.
Right.
So I need to level up. I need to work hard and put in my time to be welding like that guy over there, be welding like this person. All the people I see online, you know, that's thousands of hours, hundreds of hours that they've dedicated to their craft. And so I also, on a need base, right, needed to work.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot. I learned a lot from my coworkers. You make these friendships, you know, at 5 a.m. on a Saturday when someone brings tamales, they're your best friend, you know?
Yeah.
And so we're all like pulling in overtime. You definitely learn a lot. I worked at a automation, we made automotive seating.
Okay.
And so different components, and I worked in the stainless steel department where we TIGged, but also did all the parts we worked on were exposed. So they had to be beautiful welds, but also structurally sound, right?
Wow.
And so just climbing up and earning certifications at different companies as well, right? Whatever they needed. I was like, hey, I'd like to, you know, certify for that. What do you need from me? Sure, I'll work overtime. And just kind of, I told you about skipping lunch, right?
Yeah.
I was very clear about my goals. I
Very focused.
I was very focused and clear about I loved welding. I
Right.
love metal. So
So you would skip lunch?
I would skip lunch, not all the time. I love to eat. I get very hangry. So it would be
Yeah.
a very big lunch on my 15-minute break. Because I'm not eating. I love to eat.
So you wouldn't take like a full hour?
Oh, manufacturing gives you 30 minutes, first of all.
Do we need a break now for this cookie?
So you get a 15-minute break. Usually, you know, it depends what time you start. And then you get a 30-minute lunch. And at that 30 minutes, once that bell rings, you better be back at your shop. So then having that flexibility at fabrication shops where it's a little bit more, you know, unstructured is cool. But I'm also like, hey, why are you come on, let's get to work. Let's finish this. What are we doing?
Right.
And then now at the shop too, I'm trying to ride that balance with the students of I'm not going to be chasing you around when break's done or lunch is done. This is your 10 weeks that you're here that fly by. So you can either get in and weld or you can talk for 15 minutes after. And, you know, at the end finals week, everything will compound. So it's a lot about, you know, just kind of activating their internal guide, right? Like their internal timer on all that.
All these jobs in Chicago?
And local suburbs.
Local suburbs?
Yeah. Not too far from here. I worked at a company not too far from, first of all, this is very far. So like,
For the record, we're in Elgin, Illinois.
Yeah.
very far. It was
Of
Chicago area.
stuff.
Far west of Elgin, Illinois.
for the record, I'm from Chicago, and it was an hour and 20 minutes to get here.
Yeah.
On
We do
290.
appreciate it. We'll be sending you home with lovely cookies at the end of this. if
All
you haven't
right,
heard.
Apparently
it's
she
worth
Help
it.
it with the commute.
Drove through a small storm
It was like a
system, too.
micro store. I'm like, what is happening?
Yeah.
Where am I going?
Well, right
Elgin.
before we recorded, our internet was knocked out too. So
Oh, see?
We paid the price.
Right.
We're without internet for 20 minutes.
yeah, right. How did we survive?
So tell us about Chicago Women in Trades.
Yeah, Chicago Women in Trades is a nonprofit organization. We're located in Chicago. And it's been around since 1981. So,
Get outta here.
Yeah.
Really? Wow.
So it actually started with a small group of 5 to 6 women who were carpenters. And we're like, hey, we need to organize as far as getting into the trades, getting more women, these blue collar jobs, right, with good benefits. How do we do this and get into construction? So initially it was started with a focus in construction to integrate women into those jobs and positions. But then at some point they realized a lot of the unions, our iron workers, pipe fitters, need metal based. Like if you had welding experience, you had a leg up on that application, right?
Right.
And so about 10 years ago, they launched the welding department. And so it just started very modest, right? They rolled it out. It was a test run to see. And I think it was only available for alumni from the other programs to come in, like the construction programs, to come in and learn welding for their construction jobs. And then it just evolved, like it stays evolving
Right.
every cohort. into what it is now. So now it's a 10-week program. It's 300 hours of majority hands-on training. The first 2 weeks, they get their OSHA 10 certification in construction. And then they focus on their shop math, they do blueprints, weld symbols, and then hands-on training. You know, we're welding. We offer, since we certify them in just a standard D9.1 sheet metal, they only have to submit a 2F, but I definitely encourage them for 3F, 4F, like push it. And also they have the option to also submit a sample in 18 gauge. So 10 gauge or 18 gauge. Again, you could do the bare minimum or you could push yourself, right? And it's really up to them, and all of them always push themselves, which is a beautiful thing to see. And yeah, it's a 10-week program. The three requirements to graduate is they have to pass the final written exam, right? Which is just kind of overview of everything they've learned in a 10 weeks, the blueprints, the shop math, you know, weld terms, all that good stuff, right? The second requirement is to pass their weld sample. We have a CWI come in, check their work, and, you know, pass or fail depending on their samples. And then the third and final requirement is a final project where they get to test all the fabrication skills that they've, you know, acquired this very short window. We've had some amazing final projects from the women that did not know how to weld or metalwork 10 weeks before. And they're like creating these awesome, you know, first time projects out of metal.
What are some examples of that?
Some examples are like, okay, a closet system that was 9 feet tall. I mean, I have pictures. I'll show you.
Oh, there you go.
Let me see. What else have we had? Last class, they made a tiny forge. So they brought in their own, you know, fire bricks, but they built it out. And I was like, all right, you got to test that outside. You're not testing that in the shop, right? Like,
see, safety always.
That flammable, yeah. What else have we had? A bunch of furniture like this, like for a first timer who hasn't cut at these angles, to be able to produce coffee tables, side tables, anything. I have them think about their living situation.
Right.
What do they need? Do you need a lamp? Do you need a coffee table? Do you need, and then kind of gear it towards that. People are like, I need a boat. I'm like, no, you don't. First of all, we're not making a boat. Cut it out. You'll sink in steel. Let's talk about that, you know? And we do focus on MIG, right? Because that's the certification. But we do very brief introduction to TIG and stick, just to kind of ignite that for them, right? Like if that's something you want to do, then they're aiming for those TIG jobs, and then hustle and do that. And you could always come back. Alumni are, we have open shop hours, so our alumni are allowed to come back once they're alumni to come in and practice TIG or stick or work on projects. Oh, wow. So it is a free program too. We get a lot of applicants, but we definitely want to cater to the need. Who needs this? Who needs this? A lot of times our students are in a situation in life where they need stability, right? And so the program in 10 weeks will is a bridge to that, because then they get a job, they have a career, they're working towards their goals. A lot of times if they want to apply to union, that application's very long. I'm like, get a job meanwhile, gain that experience hands-on while the application process is, you know, rolling. So then suddenly they're stable. We had a student who was in data entry, and I think she trained horses on the weekends, right? Wow. And so she's like, I'm ready. I want to work with my hands. I want to do this. And she did, in addition to our welding program, there was a pre-apprentice program with the local 63, and I think local 44. And she got into local 1. And so in 8 months, she's working on the Green Line in Chicago, you know, with the iron workers. So in such a short amount of time, you can transform from one year to the other where you can be. And that's what I want the women to understand. Like, if you commit to yourself, you can definitely pivot and transform the quality of life you're leading. If you need stable income, if you need benefits, if you need independence, a lot of times our students are in a really rough spot, sleeping out of their cars, you know, just getting by. So what Chicago Women in Trades does is that we try to remove as much barriers as possible. So we provide a modest but still helpful, like, transportation stipend weekly, so you could get to school, you know, get to our classes. If women have kids, we have relationships with local daycares, and a reduced rate, right, where they operate the same hours as jobs, construction jobs versus like standard hours. What else? Supportive services. So we're trying to remove the barriers as much as possible. Right. On staff, we have a career placement staff person who is just there to help you get a job afterwards. Our welding department consists of 3 people. It's me, my co-instructor, and then we have a welding case manager who's the liaison between our grant funders jobs and the students, and is there to check in on private situations that maybe the instructors don't need to know, but the case manager is there. So it's a very tight-knit community that you enter in. It's a family.
Right.
It's a sisterhood, right? And you come in and we want you to feel safe and learn as much, make all the mistakes here so that when you're out there, it's not a big deal. You know how to fix things and troubleshoot.
Yeah.
How many students? How many students are in the program?
In the program, we do anywhere from 10 to 12 and 4 cohorts a year.
Okay.
And out of that, we generally have, so like, let's say 10 graduate, we usually place 8 right away, like within the next, like 2 to 4 weeks. And then there's always like 2 scragglers, right? Where I'm like, come on, get a job. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Don't be scared. But that happens. I mean, it's life, right?
Right, yeah.
We can only do so much.
Yeah.
Like, I need you to click apply.
Yeah. Did you find the program, as you describe it, did some of those elements really help you get prepared as you're about to kind of take on the challenge of being in the manufacturing world?
Yeah, good question. I don't think we didn't have a case manager. It was very small. The staff was smaller, for sure. Yeah, I didn't have a welding case manager. And like I said, it was more focused on welding. So if I was able to run a bead, right? And I think from what I remember, also the fabrication, it wasn't a big focus on fabrication. So when I entered into the field, there was a lot of things I had to learn on the job, right?
Yeah.
Which is great, but it's also men staring at you while you're learning and fumbling through a tool, you know? And it's like, this is awesome. I love this.
Yeah.
And so do it in the shop. Get comfortable here. So when you're out there, you're good.
Yeah.
You know how to roll with it without that added anxiety that you're going to feel naturally, right? And so you get good at something. So I would say that Chicago Women in Trades and with the welding department, we are constantly evolving. Even from one class to the next, we're changing this. We're going to do this now. We're going to get more clear on this project. We're going to add a project to learn about squaring because that wasn't good. We're going to add a project on miter cuts so that they get comfortable with tube and cutting. So that kind of thing of like finding the gaps, the learning gaps, and being like, let's fill it just so that they're completely confident when they get out there.
Did you, I mean, you bring a lot of positive energy, you know what I mean? I can see where like you're not going to let like a temporary obstacle get in your way. So if you get in a manufacturing setting, and maybe the places you work were different. I'm guessing it's going to be older guys. And how is that for you coming into an environment that's not like reflective of you or maybe your close friends? It's just totally male dominated and old and I assume cranky. Just because I'm at that age now.
The cranky ones are my favorites.
This is why we waited to do this after lunch for Dan.
Yeah, so do you have more to that question, or what was the end of that question?
That's actually a good
really
point.
Detailed in that description. So
how your entry into manufacturing, how did it what was your take and how did you react to it?
Yeah. Okay. Definitely a learning curve, right?
The reason I asked that is because I think that is part of the barrier for people in general, but women maybe in particular.
Yes, absolutely. I think absolutely. It is something that, okay, so like you start, right? And I think back then I was kind of trained under the idea of like be invisible, right? So like don't wear perfume, don't wear makeup, wear big clothes and do this, basically disappear. And the men will behave, right?
Wow, that's crazy.
And then everything will be fine.
So were you told directly that, or is it kind of insinuated?
No. I feel like that was the pressure, right? Like don't be too feminine, don't be too, and for me, being a creative person and with, I like to write bright colors and stuff like that. I was like, okay, that's cool. But then what I have discovered is you have to be authentic and true to yourself, right? So if that's not really you, then you're being fake, right? So I was like, okay, I can't do this like fake, masculine thing. It's not me. So I am who I am, and I'm still going to kill it here. You know what I mean? I'm still going to be as feminine as possible, but I'm also going to work probably a lot faster and harder because I have to at this point, right, to learn. I definitely tell the students this. There's going to be tons of allies, right, that you have on the job, but there is people that don't want you there, don't believe you belong there. are cranky and have never had to deal with a woman on the floor before, right? So they're just kind of like not interested. And you'll face a lot of isms like racism, sexism, all that good stuff, right? So how do you deal with that? How do you maneuver? Because you can't let that stop you. You can't let that be the obstacle that prevents you from evolving or growing or getting better or moving around in the company. So there's different approaches, right? You could ignore it. You could approach it directly, or you can just let it slide off, right? Did I have sexual harassment? Of course. You know, there's definitely those instances. The funnest ones are the ones that happen right after sexual harassment training that a company administers, and we're all sitting there very uncomfortable with these like 1980, you know, like video coming up and just these awkward examples. I'm like, awesome, this is great. I'm the only woman welder in this training.
Is that the case?
And then in some instances, for sure. And then a lot of the times, I'm the only woman or one of three in a department, right? Like, you're out there and you're alone, essentially. So. Right after that, you know, a gentleman coming up and being like, you have a very strong walk, you know, and it's so attractive. And I'm like, we just got out of training. I'm wearing a welding jacket. I look like a 14-year-old boy. What are you talking about? Like, because, you know, I have like my hair hidden. I have a welder's cap. I have an oversized jacket on. What are you talking about? And I was like, okay, this is great. So nothing sunk in from this training, right? But then you have amazing allies that are like, hey, you shouldn't do that. You should do this. This is a faster way. I'm like, this is great. Like, we're eating tamales no more. You know, there's no, I believe my first energy drink was from a man that was 60 years old. He's like, here, I got this for you at, you know, 6 a.m. on a Tuesday. And I was like, should you be drinking this? Like, what? I'm going to tell your wife. Like, what are we doing here? And then that kind of thing, right? Like, you definitely have tons of friendships. I think towards the end, I learned I needed to be myself and also just very clear about my boundaries, right? Because there can be a lot of misinterpretations. Like, you smile and it's like, hey, you're smiling, you know? And I was like, okay. So one method that worked for me was I was at my station, I'm working, and if there was anyone kind of like bothersome, they'd come by and be like, hey, I want to talk. I'd just grab my hammer and go, yep, what do you got to say? And they're like, why do you have to grab the hammer? I'm like, what do you have to say? And they're like, well, nothing now. Okay, cool. And then they would leave. I'm like, oh, this works great. This method's awesome. So if you just grab a tool and just make eye contact and say, what's up? They get uncomfortable. So that's always a method, right? Then just kind of writing the serious, playful, but very clear about boundaries, right? I'm not.
Did it work most of the time?
It did. It did as I refined my methods. Absolutely. I am very clear now. Was I clear when I first started? Absolutely not. I was timid. I was like, is this how, like, a male-dominated environment? This is what it is to work in?
That hammer is both a figurative and a literal good selection and tool. I think when it comes to getting messages through my head, it might be helpful.
Yeah, you just hold it in your hand. You're like, what's going on? Why are you holding that? What do you need?
Was it a titanium hammer?
Standard steel, you know, company issued, but my expensive ones are at home. But
well, I had a question about that. So I know a lot of businesses are trying to like modernize their culture in that aspect. Do a lot of companies reach out to Chicago Women in Trades to kind of help maybe guide their culture that way?
They're not a lot, right? But in reverse, we are sending women, so we want to make sure that everything's going right. So we have the students check in. We have, you know, a group chat where student alumni is all on there, and they can talk to each other. They have our numbers. They have our emails. And companies are pretty responsive when Chicago Women in Trades is like, hey, what's going on? Is everything good over there? Do you need any assistance? And we definitely do offer that invitation, like any kind of training. We're here for that. But we've had some awesome success stories. There was this one company in Chicago that I think they've been in existence for 30 years, and they never had a woman work. And so one of our alumni about 3 years ago got hired there, and she didn't know how to TIG, and they needed a TIG welder. So she went in for 2 weeks, and they were open to her training there and then applying at the conclusion of those 2 weeks. She did it. She killed it. They hired her. And they panicked. They're like, we've never had a woman here. They didn't have a woman bathroom. They probably had like inappropriate things all over the you know, like plastered on the lockers. So they were like scraping things off like in preparation for this woman joining. And she's a badass. She's really great. And a year later, they had one opening, and they came directly to the school, and they were like, she has killed it. So she's such an amazing worker, so efficient. Can we hire another Chicago Women in Trades welding student? This is what we need. We need someone to TIG. They don't necessarily need to know, but they need to be willing to like train in, you know, just fabrication, a good eye for detail and measurement. I'm like, I have just the selection. So then I sent someone over, and now it's the third one that they've hired.
Wow. That's awesome.
So it went from 0 in the 20 or 30 years they've been in existence to the last 3 years. Every time there's an opening, as the men are retiring, they're hiring the women because the women are getting it done. So that's been awesome. So there's also that, right? Like, there's so much positive in this, like just infiltrating. It's not even infiltrating. It's kind of just having one person pave the way, and then you put your hand back, and then you pull the next person, right? And that's what it is.
You
that's
need
what
a
it's
reason
about.
for people, environments to change. And like, given the reason, people were, what was the path of least resistance? Thinking like a Cro-Magnon, man.
I was going to ask, like, how many of your students, former students, are you still in contact with, like, after they're done with your program?
Yeah, so we have an alumni thread, and they're pretty, conversational on there, especially when we add a new class. We're like, hey, here's a new class that just graduated.
Oh, wow.
And they're like, welcome, what's going on? So then people, if, they're going on an interview, they're like, hey, has anyone been to this company I'm interviewing? Any tips? Or what are the weld tests like? And the conversation kind of goes back and forth in that way. So the alumni stay in contact. They also form their own friendships, right?
Yeah.
So that's what we want as allies. And then if they know someone, then they can bring that woman into the company. I did that when I was working in the industry. I saw an opening for another fabricator, and I was like, hey, I know someone. Are you open to it? And they're like, sure, bring her. And got another woman hired where they also had no women. I was the first one. So that kind of thing, right? It's like word of mouth, but also our work ethic speaks for ourselves. So we tell them, you represent Chicago Women in Trades. So when you go out there, please do a good job and work well. And like, you're representing, you're possibly opening a door or closing it, right? For the women to come after you. So please keep that door open and your handouts to pull someone else in. So that's kind of how we work. We want to build, we don't want to just process students, right? Like where you come in, thank you so much, and graduate, and we never talk to you again. We want a community. We want a sisterhood, right? We want you to feel safe throughout this entire journey. Please circle back. And so when we had to hire an assistant, when I got promoted, there was an opening for an assistant welding instructor. It's an alumni. So it's someone that has come by in between jobs, has been in fabrication, recently did manufacturing. So all the experience, but having come through the program. So now it's run by 2 alumni, which is great.
Do you see yourself in a lot of the students?
Not in I definitely attributes for sure. Like when they're nervous or when they're probably being hypercritical of themselves at certain points. When they're over gripping, why did no one tell me to release my grip? I think 6 months I was just doing this.
Death grip.
So I'm like, no death grip, relax your shoulders. This is a relaxing, awesome process. Like when you're welding, you're the most relaxed. It's at ease. Everything's like, you should be the calmest. You're zenned out. And they're like, what? I had some students that hold their breath through the entire bead. They're just like, they're like, I don't want to breathe because I don't want to root it. So then stepping in and being like, hey, I understand. I also used to death grip and things. I'm going to have you stop that habit at 2 weeks versus 6 months. I'm here to intervene. I totally relate to that. And it is an evolution in the 10 weeks where women will doubt themselves. And at the end, they've gained that confidence in themselves, right? They're scared of sparks, and now they love the sparks. They're walking right through them. Where they're scared to work with the disc cutter, they're like, oh no, that's their the preferred way of cutting metal. So just the self-evolution that happens in this program is awesome. I think the hardest part of this is not teaching welding or teaching how to operate tools. It's convincing them that they are capable and worthy of being in the industry is probably the hardest part. But once they get that, it's amazing.
Right. Do you feel like you're at an advantage with all your experience being as an instructor now? At
an advantage, like in this role?
Not so much as teaching. So you came from industry.
Okay.
And now you're an instructor. Do you think that kind of brings an added element of maybe realism or true world knowledge that makes them better off?
Absolutely, because I try to share it as much as I can with them, right? It does, because you've been out there. When you've worked 6 days a week, 10-hour days, and you've come in and your body aches. And, I told you about those first 6 months where my pinky, the death grip, my pinky was going numb. And I was like, what am I doing? I was lifting, I'm petite. So to lift like 70-pound frames, and flip them over on a table and be like, I'm good. I got it. So I'm like, you use your legs. You squat down and you lift it this way, not upper body. And just, if something's really high, you ask the tall welder to get it. You don't struggle. You ask that guy. And so also just having that real world experience definitely helps, because it's this insight, right, to this world that's unknown to them. And I'm like, you got this, you can do this. Also, when they come back and they're like, hey, I'm going to this, I can relate. And I'm like, okay, cool. How are you going to maneuver that situation? Here's what I've done, or what I suggest, or what I've learned. So I think experience is always a good thing to kind of add. And then they're going to have their own experiences, which is great. So you don't want to like over-parent, right? You don't want to be like, duh. They got to go learn and fall and scrape their knees on their own, right? And then come back and be like, oh, that wasn't that bad.
Yeah, you're talking to daddy disconnect here. Keep my distance.
I was gonna.
Daddy disconnect. You good?
That's gonna be your new tagline on the episode. Yeah.
You can actually find me on Twitter at
name tag. Right. I was gonna ask about the program in general. Like, it sounds like there's a lot of interest with the welding program, and I'm curious if there's any plans for expansion, or maybe getting another instructor, or more classes, or I guess it'll depend on funding, right?
Funding, and also space. I think we need a bigger building as we grow and add more tools.
Where are you now?
We're on 16th and Western, so we're in this kind of like big warehouse setting, industrial. We're on the 3rd floor, but we need more space. Like the welding needs more space, because it's a shared space, right? So we have 3 programs, and it's multi-purpose area that is very close to the welding shop. So like it's dusty, and then the construction classroom is right near our shop, so they always have like a nice layer of dust to kind of wipe off before they start their evening classes. So I think having a dedicated floor to welding would be awesome, right? We also have staff like that, case managers. What else do we have? Retention specialists. We've added some staff, and they're in an office, with the laptops, and we're just out there just, making all these noises. So just kind of being able to spread out more, I think that would allow the possibility. I think at max we could only accept 12, because we only have 12 machines, like 12 stations. And so even that is shared. One goes down, we like to, switch it around. So I think if we had a bigger space, for sure, that would be great. Right.
Yeah, it seems like local manufacturers are making connections with Chicago Women in Trade. So I mean,
we have a lot of
is that family or kind of community growing as well?
It's growing so much. Just on a micro level, right? When I mentioned that company that never had a woman, and then now they hire women, and it's slowly growing. But we also have a partnership with this company not too far from, in Elmhurst, but I thought it was Elgin, but it's Elmhurst. Ralph H. Simpson hosts us. They stop their fabrication floor, host our welding class, and we go to every station where the workers are, and they actually work on the actual pieces that they're but working on. So they have contracts with Local 63, different contractors. And so if they're working on a staircase, the students get to work on that staircase with that welder. If another guy is tigging some rails, they get to TIG with if someone's, torch cutting something off, to pieces, they get to work. So they divide up by groups of 2 our students, and they stop their floor, and they just train the women for hands-on, and they host our class. They give us a list of dates, and so every cohort gets the experience to just have some shop time with like a real world experience with working on a floor. So that's really great. So we have partnerships like that that's
kind of cool.
That started with the director just kind of walking through and being like, wow, this is the program. It's a small group. I think we can host y'all.
Wow.
Once every cohort. And I was like, that would be amazing. It's our favorite field trip, It's not just looking and like getting a tour.
Right, yeah.
It's hands-on, and they're looking at blueprints, and they're seeing what it's like.
That step from the classroom into the real shop floor can be a little bit of a shock. I mean, just reflecting back on how you described your job interview and the power source thing, which is, that's kind of crazy. But, that you know, there's no telling what you're going to walk into, and
There really
it goes
isn't.
with job. That's almost any field, though.
Yes.
But it can be especially intimidating given somebody who's not familiar with it, B, looking around, and once again, you know, a bunch of male dominated industry. Yeah, anything you can do to prep those people and also have those people to welcome them into their environment, it's got to be a plus.
Yeah, it's so helpful. The students love it. It's great. So definitely always working with our local unions, and they host the other programs like the construction-based ones to come in and do demos. And so we have a lot of partnerships, and we're always looking for more because we're ever expanding, right, our range. So
Do you miss anything in terms of being more of an instructor now instead of kind of working on things all the time?
I definitely do. That's where the furniture making comes in. I'm like, all right, the students are gone. I'm just going to whip this up. And, you know, I always had a reason to make it. I wasn't just making, you know, it started as I need to make an auction item for this, you know, welding gala coming up. Okay, cool, I'll do that. And then I'm like, oh, man, I miss just working and creating and, you know, shutting out the world and just getting lost in like the measurements, the cuts, the angles. And at the end, what I love about metalwork is like it's a piece of metal. It has no value. And then you add value to it with the cuts, with the welding, with the grinding, with the finishing, and all of a sudden it's a piece of furniture. It's functional, right? And that's that evolution of like from start to finish. I love that. So I do miss that. But it's super important work, what we're doing at Chicago Women Trades. So I think it's just my... what I'll need to do is just carve the time out to do it for myself after work hours, because it's still super important what we're doing at Chicago Women Trades, and that's needed. So I just have to carve out more time instead of going home and resting.
So are you working on any projects right now? Like you mentioned the furniture. I don't know if you got anything in the works
me
right
and
now.
the co-instructor were actually talking about we want to build out some office chairs, some for our office. Like, you know, we're welders. Why would we buy that? We're gonna make that, you know. So that's our thing. We're gonna build out, and then a bench system for the students. So we're that kind of thing, right? It's like, give me a reason. What do we need? So we need chairs. So I'm refusing to buy them. We're gonna make them.
There you go. There you go.
How many chairs? How many chairs?
Just 2 for our
Gotcha.
office, but you know, make them how we want. We're gonna look it up, see how creative we can get. Push the envelope. I don't sew, so the cushions are always an issue for me.
I was gonna ask, where do you get your ideas for some of these?
Everywhere, right? Like and things I see online. Pinterest is a big one. Also just imagination. Also changing shapes. Like if I like the shape of something, I'm like, I would add this or that. Sketch it out. Do something. You know, just modifying it and making it your own. Just I'm intrigued by shapes of furniture and the way they fit, and so that's organically just kind of looking at it and playing with it in my mind.
Have you become connected to the online community of welders and creators?
Oh, you mean all the ones I obsess over? Those?
Okay, that would be the answer. That would be the answer.
Yeah, I actually also created Instagram for our welding department because we are constantly doing so much in the shop that kind of just, you know, happens and then it disappears, right? So Welder Baddies is our welders. And that's the community where they share. All the students are on there, but that's how we get new students too. They're like, hey, I saw this, or my friend's doing this, and she posted about it, and we're expanding because our program is mostly word of mouth. It's either Google search or word of mouth. So one student going through the program suddenly encourages 3 people that might have been hesitant or thinking that they can't do it, and so forth. And it's like a ripple effect, right? And so the social media really helps to connect, and also just to post helpful tips, you know, like, hey, look, this is how you can jig this. Hey, you know how you were asking me how to, you know, curve rod at this particular diameter, this person's doing it like this, you know, that kind of thing.
Right.
We can't ignore the power of social media, right? And like the influence of online. So we're yes, I definitely follow a lot of people. Yes.
And what was that handle again?
Welder Baddies.
Welder Baddies and Daddy Disconnect. You can
Daddy
find them.
Disconnect.
I feel like I'm going to have to follow up on this.
But yeah, online community. Yeah, so there's our students. Look at that.
There you go.
So there they are welding, right? So I'll
Yeah.
always kind of feature like that class. If you swipe again, it should have like their final projects. You know, some people made tables, some people, that kind of thing, right? So
Yeah.
it's like that class graduated, let's congratulate them, and here's, you know, a little Lego guy cake that they made. You know? So just that kind of thing, right? Like
Yeah.
encouraging them and then kind of marking this moment in their life that is pivotal. So it's a beautiful community kind of to build. And then look at that last reel, it went viral and I didn't know what to do with that. So I kind of stopped making reels. I was kind of overwhelmed. The last one, I was like, whoa, that one, the metal one, it was just like scrapping metal, right? Like organizing it. But if you hear the audio, it says like when you're trying to toss out things and you're like, nope, actually you take it out of the garbage, this has potential.
Right,
nope,
right.
I could definitely use this. That is us all day in the shop, right? Like
Yeah.
we're like, actually that piece of scrap, a student could probably use that for
Yeah.
for this or for that. So that kind of thing, right?
I mean,
got
that's probably a big part of the job is just kind of making sure you have stuff to work on.
all
correct?
the time,
Yeah.
yes, and also teaching them like how to make things, how to think creatively. Scrap, you know, what could that be? Could that be a post on some of your work? We do have some students that challenge themselves for the final projects to just make things from scrap.
Right.
Like that student made everything from scrap.
Oh.
Oh, wow.
So she did not want to use any new metal. She wanted to find everything, and she made like an interlocking system, and that chair actually becomes a table.
Oh, wow.
Kind of just highlighting these beautiful like creations the students learned in 10 weeks, which is really awesome. The different methods and the limits they'll push.
Yeah.
And this is a free 10-week program too. Free.
Yes,
Wow.
apply, women 18 and older. No age limit. It's just you have to be dedicated. We are strict on like attendance and, you know, timeliness, because you miss so much when you miss a day, right? I'm trying to teach you so much in this short amount of time. So please show up every day. So and that's why we try to remove as much barriers as possible with like transportation stipends, supportive services, just so that you can make it. And if you trust the journey and trust the process, your life can change, and and you can reach your goals, and it can lead you somewhere that you never even imagined, like me here.
I was about to say, right?
Right here.
Right.
Sitting right
Elgin,
here.
Illinois. Which is way far away from Chicago.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Hour and 20-minute drive.
She had to get through a storm to get here.
Yeah, that was weird. So yeah.
So do a lot of the women entering the program come from similar backgrounds, non-welding? I guess that's what I'm asking,
Yeah.
non-welding backgrounds?
Absolutely. We have some women that were probably like nannies, data entry, computer-based jobs,
Wow.
to you know, people that have probably been creative in some, or woodworking, and they're like, I want to learn metalwork, and then they just fall in love with the process, you know. So it's an eclectic background kind of thing. Yeah, you'll like that welder upside down on the handstand was a circus. She's a she's a circus artist, so she would teach after school circus arts and then come weld. And so that kind of thing, right? Like we have a fire dancer who performs, and she's a TIG welder by day. She's the one that actually paved the way for that company to hire 2 more.
No kidding.
So
Wow.
she's awesome, and she's an amazing TIG welder. And at night, you know, on the weekend, she's fire dancing and gymnast. So I think her final project was actually creating a stand where she could do handstands on it. So it was like this thing that was foldable that she could take to gigs. So she added hinges, she made them and would carry it. So it's really that kind of thing where we have people from all types of backgrounds on this journey for 10 weeks, every day, Monday through Friday, you know, just on this journey together. And then they separate. That's why we have the Instagram, right, for them to stay in contact, and then their group chat, because it's super important to like maintain that community when you're out in a shop and you're the only woman.
Yeah, you listed some, you know, some of your former students and what jobs they have now. I don't know. There's some other interesting places that they've, you know, they've wound up at after, you know, graduation.
Yeah, we have some a student at Chicago Scenic. They build out cool things for like Walt Disney World and you know museums, the Museum of Science and Industry, things like that. Other companies that they work at are like ornamental, like beautiful ornamental structures, right? Stairways and railings. And then we have people in the union, and then we have people in manufacturing who are making the world go round, right? Because manufacturing is a lot of, you know, things that we take for granted that are produced in, you know, mass quantities, and that's done by like hardworking welders and fabricators.
Yeah. Do you miss running your own business?
I miss, Yes, you keep bringing.
No, I like you've done a lot in a little amount of time, and I don't have questions about myself because I've just settled. Somebody who hasn't always intrigues me. So
Yeah, no, I definitely miss. Okay, I do miss welding a lot. Like the way I you know,
I was
miss,
like thinking
I
more
miss,
of like your jewelry stuff, like kind of doing your own thing.
I do.
You know what I mean?
There is a beautiful thing about like independence, right? And like having your own structure for your day, and also like pushing for goals, like to get those clients that I was shipping to all over in different places, was me also being my own marketing team, right? Was also me like being my own photographer, and was also me just like figuring it out and finding suppliers for my metal, because I would buy my metal from only women. So then I would find that, and so just kind of being intentional about who I'm buying from to create these pieces and then send them out with intention. So yes, that's awesome. I feel like at some point it could circle back to that, or in a larger scale, can we have an all-woman fabrication profit part? So we're nonprofit, right? But is there a possibility for like graduates to start off creating, working at a woman-run fabrication thing? I don't know. It's percolating in my mind. We're gonna figure it out.
Brainstorm.
But business-wise, that's always an aspect in my mind where I'm like, how could we do this? We need a bigger space.
Right? No, it starts there, right?
Is that in the works at all? Has there been discussions?
We want to. Yeah, it's in conversation. I think we're in a lease right now, that's kind of locked in for a while, but we need more space for sure. Just how you knock down this wall, imagine like expansion makes a big difference.
So being a nonprofit, I mean, I assume you would welcome interested parties who are kind of want to support such an effort?
Yes.
There we go. And where might they find you?
They will find us at CWIT.org. So that is Chicago Women in Trades, CWIT.org. And then you could reach out to us. Could always leave my email, things like that. But absolutely reach out to our, I think under there, contact us, send us that, and our admin would filter that to the right person to get it going. But we're always open to collaborations, partnerships, any kind of just collaboration with other companies and the industry.
Have you convinced any friends or family to, follow your path in the metalworking and the welding?
It is literally my personal goal to like get as many women in. Absolutely, I have. I've been, I remember the day I went to the informational at Chicago Women in Trades, and I completed like the informational, all the steps required to get into this program, and I got in. I called like 3 friends and I was like, you should do this with me. You should do this. And they're like, oh, scary. No way. I'm not. Yeah, get back to you, And sure enough, I circled back to that friend. She saw me working in the industry. And then when I circled back to Chicago Women in Trades, I'm like, hey. So I'm like, one of the instructors, what do you think? She was a pharmacist for 10 years. Wow. She's one of the most amazing natural. I didn't even know fabricators could be natural, right? Like naturally good at that. She's the one building out sets for like Walt Disney and the museum. So I definitely was on her about like, come on, I think you'll be great. And it's happened where, on my personal Instagram where I'm on there and I'm just posting welding stuff, people see that, and I've had women either reach out to be part of Chicago Women in Trades, the construction programs, or join the welding program. And they're like, it's because we saw you and we've been kind of following that you stuck to this. And I was like, yes, come on, keep bringing the women for sure. So yes, it's my personal goal.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm looking at your staff list here. Yeah. It's extensive. And
it is extensive, and it actually hasn't been updated because we just hired like 3 or 4 new people, and there was some moving around. So
gotcha.
Yeah.
You mentioned 3 programs: construction, welding. So
TOP is our technical opportunities program. That is an evening program, Tuesday and Thursdays, 6:30 to 9:30, and then Saturdays all day, 8 a.m. to 4. Gotcha. And then welding is Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. And then we have Women Build Illinois program, which is construction as well, but it's during the day. So for the women that could commit to I believe it's 8 to 4 p.m. for 10 weeks.
Gotcha.
So we try to stagger it that way too for availability, and who can. Some people need to maintain employment throughout during the day, so when they come afterwards, they train. That involves a lot of field trips to construction sites, but also contractors, partnerships, and unions will host them for demos. So kind of get a sample of all the unions available. Every everything from like plumbing, bricklaying, carpentry, and then they make a decision. And the whole time they're really focused on math and passing those entrance exams and like that part. So they those programs focus more on union and construction. So welding is the program where we have like 3 branches. If you want to do union, we're here for that, and we have all the support. You want to do fabrication, or you just need a job, we're going to go get you in manufacturing. Yeah. So definitely always developing partnerships with companies.
And I see that Chicago Women in Trades also partners with or connects with other states, like women-focused trades organizations
to kind of help launch the same initiatives in other states. It's definitely in a leadership position, because I think it's one of the oldest ones that have been established. So they kind of come to us for like curriculum building, right, and strategy and how to recruit and outreach, right, initiatives and stuff like that. So we are an open book. We want this to keep expanding and, just creating a network and community.
It'll be nice to have kind of your network grow to other parts of the U.S.
Yeah, definitely.
People move, and
absolutely
to have that support network
that
you kind of described for Chicago area would be kind of nice to have elsewhere.
Yes, absolutely, and it's needed for sure. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks so much,
Thanks
Desiree.
so much. Thanks so much for having me.
Treat. Do you have any questions, comments, complaints about Gareth?
Email Daddy Disconnect.
Daddy Disconnect at Gmail.
No, just go straight to Gareth at podcast at fmamfg.org. And please tell your friends about the Fabricator Podcast, and you can get it wherever you get podcasts.
Yep.
Is that suitable as a closer?
That's good.
Okay, thank you. Goodbye.
The Fabricator Podcast is a production of Fabricators and Manufacturers Association, located in Elgin, Illinois. The show is hosted by Dan Davis and the staff of FMA Communications. The podcast is produced by Gareth Slager and recorded and edited by Griffin Hammond and Dana Weicker. Sales support provided by Andy Flando. Additional production support by Elizabeth Gavin, Mike Owens, Billy Kulpa, Pat Simon, Brandon Geyer, and me, Sarah Spring. Email us at podcast@fmamfg.org. Thank you for listening.